Okay, I think we can start if everyone is ready. For who doesn't know me, I'm Dana, the community leader for Women in Architecture. It's so good to see everyone here and to see some new faces. I love seeing new faces every month here, and it's good to see familiar faces as well. So thank you for being here. As Chris said, this is going to be quite an interactive session. I just wanted to gather everyone and to talk a little bit about what we've done this year, why we're here, and what we're hoping to achieve in the next year. So I will start with the usual updates, and then I will pass it on. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Perfect. So just a little bit of social media updates from April. This is just on LinkedIn. In April, we were at 1,149 followers, and now we reach 1,674 followers. So thank you so much. I know some people have been sharing our content, and this has helped a lot to increase our followers, and I'm really happy to see this growth. And on Mighty Networks, and now today we reached 775 members, which again, I'm really happy with this number. This is where we started in January. It was 492.
Can you differentiate for those who might not understand what's the particularity between WIA and Mighty Networks? Like, is one a piece of the other, or they're not overlapping? There's something completely different? Like,
so I think on Mighty Network is where we are actually gathering the community. That's where I put the all the links for the meetings, and that's where we're encouraging the talks or where people can ask for advice. So this is more like a closed community, I say, on Mighty Networks. This is what I'm hoping to achieve. And on LinkedIn is where we are announcing to the public about our meetings and where I'm trying to get more people to come into Mighty Networks. Thank you. That's very great.
Michelle has a hand up. I know you can't see as a presenter.
Sorry, that was an X. I will take it. Sorry, that was me trying to clap, and I ended up putting my hand up.
I do that all the time. They're so close together. They just need to move them apart.
Exactly. Sorry, continue, Dana.
Okay, no problem. And we had the leadership spotlight, which we started last month. So far, we had Carrie and Wendy. Thank you so much for your input. This has been really, really good. We got quite a lot of engagement. And we're going to see Chris's spotlight probably next week in A&G. And then do not forget that as members as well, you can share our spotlight with us. Our intention is to post it each week, but we haven't really got content each week. But I would be really happy if in the next year this would happen, because I know it's really inspiring to read other people's stories and see what other people are doing and what their intentions are. And these are the spotlights for 2024. From here, I think just Leslie is here. Leslie is always present at our meetings. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
I am hooting and climbing in my chair, like with so many spotlights. I appreciate this from the community. It's a great job.
Thank you. Really happy to see this as well. And these were our speakers for 2024. We started with Mario, then we had a roundtable, then we had Annalie, which I think she's here as well today. And we had Erica and Madhu. So this is it from me with the updates. I will pass it on now to either Chris, Gurpreet, or Carrie, whoever wants to go first.
I could kick off if you like. I would first like to say, Dana, thank you for all of this. I mean, this is no small task, kind of bringing this all together. Even wrangling leadership together is no small task. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So for me, why I wanted to be part of the WIA leadership, it's been an interesting journey, right? Like for me, and I think for a lot of folks, as I understand it, it's not an easy path and architecture, right? We all come at it from different ways, different angles, myself included. Had no idea I was going to fall into architecture. I just learned to love architecture, right? And over the years, I started out thinking it was very technical in nature, right? And so I love technology. I'm a geek at heart. And so, I was just kind of drawn to it, right? But the more I got into it, and just as a history, I've been in healthcare and architecture and IT, all facets, for the past 20 years. So it's been an interesting ride, working for larger companies and even startups. But one of the things that I think makes architecture very, very unique is the different, not just the non-technical aspects of this, right? Like being creative, understanding process, and getting creative in those processes to help solve problems. Technology is one half of it, but there's a lot to this as well that could benefit from having women being part of this, right? And looking back, I used to take it for granted, if I'm being honest, right? Like I always thought, people would pursue architecture if they liked architecture, but it really wasn't for me. It wasn't until I had some interns come up to me and say, "Hey, look, I'm really interested in architecture. I just don't know what to do." I didn't have a really easy answer, if I'm being honest, right? Like, how do you get into this, right? What do you do? Where do you go? I try to mentor, but that can only take you so far without the actual experiences to go along with it. So, when this opportunity came along with Isa and Wendy and Caprit and Chris and everybody, when we all came together, I thought it was a really good opportunity for us to create a safe place for women to actually come together, talk about the challenges, especially in kind of getting into this field, as well as some of the other things that they may need help with, right? Or assistance or guidance, or honestly, sometimes it's just a nudge, right? So selfishly, I get a lot out of it, right? I love seeing the growth of this community. Dana's slide showing, the growth in Mighty Networks and across the board. Chris and I are talking about other ways to help promote this group and bring in more women into this fold. So I'm super excited by this. And, we've been doing this for, oh gosh, Chris, how long have we been doing this, Capri? A couple of years at least. Yeah. Yeah.
Any
So
organization takes a long time to gain
it,
traction.
It does. It does. And, it's for me, it's one thing to do it locally, right? So I was always part of, some of our specialized group and help promoting and being an advocate. But, just seeing the reach of WIA so far in terms of it just being global in nature, what we're doing in Europe, what we're doing in Australia, it's really heartwarming and it's really amazing to see like the desire for this. And so I'm happy to be a part of it. I do not stand alone in this at all. A big part of this is the other leaderships, which you'll hear from here as well. Wendy, Paul from ISA has been a big, huge support, right, in helping us get this going. Hiring Dana to help organize our chaos, but it's been really good. So for me personally, I do get a lot out of it. I've learned a lot from a lot of our members as well. So it's been fantastic for me. Chris, you want to go next?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know how I got into architecture really either. It certainly wasn't a conscious decision. I was working in an organization, and I suppose I was doing a lot of high-level design type things, and then the role of architect just appeared, and somebody said, "Oh, you can be a solution architect." So, all right. And what does that mean? And I sort of found out what it meant slowly, but there was not very many places to go and gain information on that. So I joined the ISA organization many years ago. I think certainly when the UK chapter started, I was working with that. So that must have been, oh my God, how many years ago? 15, 20, whenever it started, ages and ages ago. But throughout that time, the underrepresentation of women is just staggering. you know, I've been in the room with 20 other architects and designers and been the only woman, which is like, that's not good. And then they think that you're a project manager. No. Again, that's a hard barrier to get through. So that's really what drives me. This needs to change because architecture is such fun. You know, it's solving these big problems and the satisfaction you gain when you know, come up with the answer. How do we do this? Oh my God, let's make it work. The, you know, mainframe migration, that's a complicated problem. And to get your teeth into that is a really good challenge. So women need this challenge. Also, you know, it's a well-paid profession. That's good. It's flexible. So, you know, you could get a work-life balance. That's good. And I also think, as Carrie alluded to, the skills you need as an architect aren't just pure technical. Obviously, you need technical capability and understanding because architecture is all about decision making. You know, you can think of architecture now as a stream of decisions that need to be made at the right time in the right way with the right people. But I think inherently this plays to what is typically seen as skills which women excel at. So things like consultation, you've got to speak to lots of people, communication, you've got to make sure that the business understands, the development team understands, and everybody in between. And you've got to be able to live with compromise, because architecture is all about finding the best way, not the perfect way, the best way, and that will often involve significant trade-offs, you know, between functionality and quality attributes. How do I manage technical debt? All those sorts of things demand an understanding and acceptance of compromise. So I think architecture is an ideal profession for women, and I really want to understand how or why more women don't go into it, because we're here, we're all interested in it. We're not where the problem is directly. I've tried asking, you know, non-architects why they don't think architecture is for them. And some of the things that came up were, oh, well, it's a boys' club. Really? It's too technical. No, it's not about technical. Or you need to be the loudest voice in the room. Now, that's really sad. But these are all things that can easily be addressed. And that's where I think we can really help by, you know, giving people the role models to follow, to see that, yes, you can be a successful woman in architecture, and to also change the view of architects. They're not the loudest voice in the room. They're the person who helps facilitate everyone to reach the right solution for the business problem. And I think we can make steps and make significant change in that space. So that's why it's so gratifying to work with, you know, Preet and Wendy and Paul and Kerry and Linda and everybody else and all of you to try and make that come into fruition. That was me.
That's awesome. Thanks,
yeah,
Chris.
Chris and Carrie covered it like pretty well.
I know going last is a hard ask on this one.
It's great because you guys covered it for me. The only part I'll acknowledge about myself is like I got into this profession. I am a technologist by education and a career choice. I was a developer. I rolled up into manager, lead, delivery lead, etc., etc. And I'll tell you that I was a very stubborn one. I was a very arrogant one in terms to when it came to making choices. I never really valued architecture because at that time, it was very ivory tower a practice. And it didn't make sense for people who were doing stuff on the ground until I actually fell flat on my face. And it was a wake-up call for me. And that's when I decided that if they're not asking me, I'm going to ask them, and I want them to do this. I'm going to ask the architecture team to do this for me. And more I did that. After like 2 years, my CTO actually pulled me out and asked me to lead that practice entirely. That's how I formed a career path out of it. So that's the addition of my story.
Yeah, I think the journey from ivory tower architect to what's going to work in today's sort of agile world is quite telling, and supports more women sort of values and strengths of women as well, because you can't know it all today. When it was a mainframe, one person could almost know everything of significance. Bit like back 300 years ago, clever people could be what's the word? I can't think of what the word is. But they were polyglot. They could know almost everything that there was. But now there's just so many different options around technology, different languages, different platforms, different approaches, different solutions. I mean, we're doing mobile apps, we're doing embedded apps, we're doing business information systems, and they all have different ways and different designs. So now the architect needs to be able to have that conversation with technologists, understand when they're giving suggestions that they might want to put because it looks good on their CV, or if they're over or underestimating. You need to have that insight to get real facts out of people and make sure you're building the solution together. You give them the information so they make the right decision as well.
So quick question, by show of hands or thumbs up, careful not to raise your hand. Everybody else have like different or similar kind of roles or where you've gotten to where you're at today? Has it just kind of happened randomly? Did you pursue it? Did you just kind of fall into it like I did? Or what was that like for y'all?
How do you handle that with a thumbs up?
Yeah, right, exactly. So open-ended question with a thumbs up, yeah.
And if you want
Yes,
to say,
no?
just put your hand up, and that's
Yeah.
fine, because we'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah.
Annalie.
Yeah.
Hi, yes, I'm Annalie. I had a speech. I had an opportunity to speak to this forum before. So yeah, it sort of happened by chance, and I'm very excited because I never knew what architecture really is. Nobody could give me a definite definition. And then I got involved in IASA, and I've passed my CTP this year, which I'm very proud of. And since I'm working with Paul to become a mentor, and I also want to teach a class, a CETA F class in West Ireland, which is a bit remote. So a lot of opportunity and a lot of doors opened for me. And I think it's the first time that I really understand how one can put a structure to it, because when I started, I was a technical lead and my boss said, you're the solution architect now. And as I said, I don't really know what it meant at the time. And I asked around and it came down to diagrams, and so it evolved. But I'm very happy with what I accomplished. And I'm really excited to help other people to see how they can structure their methods. Even if organizations don't take up the process formally, it is a thought process. And an architect is also, I agree with you, the lady who said, we are decision writers, but I think we are thought leaders in the technical space, because a lot of the technical guys pursue things from an engineering perspective, and the solution architect would come along and give that thought leadership also to the projects and the business leaders. And that is my message today.
I wanted to, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Dupreet.
No, Carrie, I was going to go tangent, so I think you're responding to Annalie.
I was just going to highlight that as well. I think it's a great point, and I think Chris mentioned that earlier. It is about decision making, and Dupreet, you said it earlier. Like, you had a thought process, right? You had a firm kind of belief in what you thought, and even in the absence, I mean, we know that a lot of leadership doesn't even have like an approach to a solution. So when you come forward with something like that, it makes a difference, right? Whether it's right or wrong, right? I mean, it is a path forward, and you can pick it apart. You can look at it for, ways to optimize it. But I think that's a really, really good point, and I'm really happy to kind of see that being brought out.
Yeah. All throughout my career, I've seen one thing, that we get very comfortable. We want to do many things, but we don't do anything about it. We just get either comfortable or we are complaining in the same place without actually doing something. And we don't realize that. And I think there's a lot of energy and time wasted into that. And it's different. People have different things. Sometimes it's with fear, sometimes it's because of the comfort zone, either or, like in some percentages, but it's mostly falls in the combination of that. That's one point. The other point is, most of the bigger decisions, I failed technologists, and I fail at it sometimes too. We are very technology driven. What we don't realize is technology is there to support the outcome the business wants. And most of the conversations fail, or the disconnects happen, when we do not connect to the outcome. As soon as you start talking about the outcome, the whole dynamic changes. You change as a person, actually, because then you start implementing that into your personal life too. So like outcome-based decisioning, outcome-based thinking, outcome-based application of whatever you do is, in my mind, like a game changer.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Gurpreet. And I think the other side, very often, some of the worst failures of architecture I've seen are where the architecture has been beautiful, but it doesn't actually solve the business need, because the architect didn't listen to what the business actually wanted, and it either became too complicated or didn't fit the level of flexibility, or just became too expensive, or whatever the reason was. So yeah, I think focus on the outcome, make sure you've engaged the right people in identifying what the desired outcome is as well. It's a very valid point.
BJ? BJ, if you're talking on
BJ, I think you're...
No, I was just going to say, is that an invitation for me to speak up? Well, I'm going to come from a bit of a different angle on this. First, I'm going to say, to me, architecture is just that word has a multitude of meanings. I confess I've been around for a long time. I actually started off as an academic, and I'm going to mention this mostly because I was a double major as an undergraduate, international relations and mathematics. My focus was on conflict resolution techniques. That was my primary interest, and that was basically trying to create self-sustaining solutions to problems. I also am an old, this will date me, but I was a Fortran programmer. I left academia, and when I was trying to get into the business world, I ended up working at Sprint, and I ended up becoming a software engineer there. But I became increasingly concerned that we were too focused on technology and we weren't paying enough attention to data. So then I spent some time where I was really looking at becoming a data modeler or a data architect. But somewhere in there, I also changed companies. But I stumbled on enterprise architecture. Initially, my training was from Steven Spiewak, but also from John Zachman. And I would say today, and then let me finish the path. And then I began thinking we weren't paying enough attention to business. And I would put it not so much outcome driven, but are we delivering business value? And today, if you ask me, I lean on Tom Graves' definition of enterprise architecture, or that the meaning of it is that things work better when they work together on purpose. And so to me, as an enterprise architect, I often make a distinction when I go into interviews. I am not a technical architect. If that's what you want somebody else. As an enterprise architect, I'm looking at business, I'm looking at processes, I'm looking at technology. I'm trying to ensure that those things all work together to achieve whatever it is that the business or organization has as its goals. So my focus really is on the relationships between things and how to ensure that they are working together on purpose. And that I firmly believe that is a needed and valued skill set, career opportunity. I don't think most people, organizations even have an understanding that this is something that they could ask for, that there are people who could help them in this, and that this is a valued role, I would say. So there.
It's super true, BJ. We actually created 3 different kinds of technical roles. One is an enterprise architect, another is a solution architect, and the third is an engineer, a technical integrator, orchestrator, or an engineer. So very, very valid. But impressive path.
I'd say it's similar, with an application architect, a solution architect, and an enterprise architect. And typically you can work across 2 of those. You can take those roles across 2, but not 3. I mean, maybe there's a superstar who can do all 3, but they would be few and far between.
Then are you managing the hands up, or should we just call out? I think Michelle is next.
Yeah, we can just call out.
Hey. Hi, I can go next. No, just your question about how did I fall into architecture? And I think like most people, you fall into it. It's not an intent. I think it comes from, many people I know start off in the engineering development space, but I think it's the curiosity about the why. Why, what's that person doing over there? Is that the same thing as this? Are we going in the same direction? And I think to get some of your points, Chris, about I look at things in terms of waste. That's one thing that architects are supposed to do. How do we get the most out of limited resources in order to drive forward the business's goals and what have you? And I think that's one thing. I feel sometimes you're a detective as an architect, particularly trying to figure out what are people actually telling me, what information do they have, how do I corral them so that they know that to share that information, and to know that that information is not going to be taken away from them. It's actually going to help enhance what they're doing. So, for me, I think it was mentioned a bit earlier on, the role of a good architect is you're probably a leader first, more than what people would say is a architect. And that's what I think I've just fallen into, because I've been fascinated about the motivation behind people and why we're doing things. So that's just my perspective on. And I agree with a lot of the other bits that were said about decision making and some of the skill sets.
Very nice, Michelle.
Okay.
Maybe Annette was next on my list.
I think Robinette, like by the names of it. I think the signs. Robinette, you're on mute.
Oh, I thought it was Diane.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever. It's
I
okay.
think we're seeing the order differently,
That's
actually.
funny.
I
Not a
think
problem. Not a
because
problem.
BJ
Which
and
is
Michelle took their hands down, it cascaded. So
uh,
as soon as you start talking, just take your hand down so that the next
Okay.
becomes an order. Sorry, Diane.
No problem. I'd love to react to a lot of things you guys said so far. Really interesting. One thing that stood out for me, Gurpreet, is where you're trying to do your job and you needed things and you weren't given the things that you needed. You say, hey, I need that. And since no one was getting it, she's like, well, I'll just do it. I'm just going to make it. And I think that attitude is so crucial to say we don't wait for things to just land on our laps. We say, how can I be a part of the solution and how can we make it work? And getting the right people together, the right assets together to be a part of the solution. And I think that drive is what makes good architects also is saying, how can I take a step back, take a look at the big picture, and provide that. And I had a similar personal experience. I'm not going to hash the whole story, but kind of in an operational role where I needed things, and then I didn't have the things I needed. I wasn't complaining about it. I just like, well, I'm just going to do it. And after a while, I'd started doing so many transversal transformation projects in the company with the supporting things so the operations could work. That then the hierarchy said, well, you should just be running that. Like they told you should just run that. And we're really lucky. We were both your experience and what I've had to have management that sees the potential and says, go for it, because I didn't ask for it. They said, you come. And a lot of people don't have that kind of people like with looking out and seeing potential and amplifying that and giving opportunities. So that's why it's really great that organizations like this exist to help people find, work their networks and see that they, kind of recognize their own potential to promote themselves too. It's not easy to promote yourself. But women or men aside, I think earlier we were talking about how is it that there's not women aren't coming into architecture. I think it's also there's not enough men either coming into architecture. We need a lot more architects than we have because I think it's unknown. There's a lot of these misconceptions. What is it? Is that even an option? Like people don't know it's an option for themselves, which is why I think it's super important what some of the leadership, I think Wendy's involved in that, but other members of the leadership working with schools, working with the programs where people are being trained to see already in your undergrad degrees and your grad degrees, this is a profession, it's a calling, it's a possibility for you. This is what it's really about. There's different pieces in it. So your daily life isn't necessarily the same and depending on which kind of layer you're intervening on or layers. So I think that that's where we need to be acting is also, as you're saying, bearing witness, demonstrating as an example, but also reaching kind of earlier on in the path that people know that's a possible destination and what it's about so that then they can go towards it. And I think schools can probably tailor to that better now than maybe 15, 20 years ago. I see sometimes now that that's options in schools, but we definitely need people taking action, not waiting for it, because that's the only way that organizations are going to really be resilient with all the disruption going on technologically, environmentally, geopolitically. I mean, we need people who take this positioning. So thanks. That was my comment.
I think that's a very valid point. Is anyone else worried that our system's becoming so complicated and so interconnected that organizations are getting to the point where they're too frightened to change anything? And that's when you realize that, oh my God, I need some enterprise architecture, because they're like, we can't. But the
well, if you're too scared too long to change, well, then the company's going to go out of business. I mean, it's just not. Change is going to happen whether you want it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Very well said. And Robin, I just wanted to make sure that I call it. I'm not trying to be talkative, but these are so important things, and I want the nectar out of every chat that's coming out. Like from your chat, what really came out to me very specifically also was the need for each and every one of us to really do this, what somebody did to us and for us to somebody else that's down there across the organization. We cannot forget that.
My name is Leslie, by the way. It's just my last name shows up first. Huh?
Leslie. Yes, lovely name, Leslie.
Okay, but Roman, it's cool, but that's not my name.
Gotcha.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just say something? I've had my hand up for a while. I don't know if that was noticed. So
Yeah, go
Please
ahead.
go.
hello, hi.
Yeah, I think
So
Robin,
this is my
I think
first.
Diane's hand has been up for some time now. Sorry, Kavita. I
Okay.
think we can see your names, but I think we let Leslie go ahead because there was some confusion. But if Diane can go, and
Okay.
then you can. Thank you, Kavita.
Sure. So I kind of would echo a lot of what's been said. I haven't even thought of myself as an architect until a few weeks ago. I had a conversation where somebody said, "Hey, what you've been doing is actually architecture." I started off in book publishing, and I was actually saw a need for, we didn't really have good processes. We didn't really have somebody who was responsible for, ensuring that our documentation, our guidelines and everything were like organized properly. So I kind of took that kind of, I guess today I would call it an information architecture kind of a role, and just kind of jumped into it. And then over time, it became clear that I was really good at understanding processes, mapping out processes, interviewing people to understand the impact of processes and how technology can make things more efficient and how systems were not working together. And I've been kind of doing that more or less informally, I guess, throughout my career. So I mean, this is kind of new to me to even think of myself as an architect, because all the companies I've worked at, the architects have always been very technical people. I don't have any formal training in this or anything like that. So yeah, it's been this is really very new for me to just kind of jump in here and just trying to kind of establish myself in the architecture world. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
Thanks,
Awesome,
Diane.
Deanne.
Awesome.
What do you think about, since you said you've kind of like fallen into it, um, it could be fun. Something that I've even done is sometimes I'll like get a book of like getting started with EA. Like, what is EA? And I pretend like I know nothing, like I'm a newbie, and I read the intro book, and then there's a lot of things you already know, and they resonate and they line up, and all the little boxes line up, but it lets you gain a little bit of extra understanding and sometimes the right keywords, the right vocabulary. So there's a couple of those that exist. Well, I mean, obviously, Wendy's written some wonderful books about bridging strategy and execution. I know Eric Jager did an intro to EA book, which has worked really well, and I've read it. It's really accessible. So I'd encourage you to, now that you're in it, because you didn't ask to be in it, and in fact, you were in it, you didn't know you were in it, like play around even kind of from like I'm a school kid again, going back and studying up. And I know that there's Anna Lee did some trainings too that were proposed by ASA to even like really formalize the training and be certified. So there's different levels of that, but it could be really empowering for you maybe to even formalize it a little bit. I don't know, idea. You're on mute.
Sorry. I think the biggest entry barrier is that vocabulary. It's like, I have a innate understanding of these concepts and things, but since I'm not using the same terminology, I think that's kind of holding me back, right? So I think you're right. I think really kind of digging in, reading things and understanding what the vocabulary is, and really using the existing like tools and structures. For me, it's been, since I've been just kind of like do it myself, just kind of learn as I go. I don't necessarily know like the formal tools and processes or procedures, whatever that architects kind of lean towards. So I think that's absolutely true.
In all of this, like there's one thing that's not to be forgotten, and that an EA is a very different person from a PM. EA is not a PMO. They're not a PMO function, right? And also that successful EAs come from very strong technology background or running technical delivery, right? So I'd
agree.
Yep.
I think the thing about architecture, I think it's about a way you think. So if you think like an architect, you can always learn the other stuff. You can learn the words. You could just say, whenever anyone asks you a question, if you just respond with, "Well, it depends," that's a good start.
Yeah, there's some truth to that for sure. Yeah, I agree.
Karen, some of you're showing up next.
Yeah, I think it might be changing, right?
It does.
It's
It's
funny.
different
It's
from
really
different
funny
people's
because I thought Kavita was next and
Yeah,
then Karen
me
came up
too.
next. Kavita, do you want to go and then Karen can go?
Yeah, can do. Thank you. So I think this is my first call, or in a while, I think at least with the community. I've been in the community a while, and access a few resources, but I think one of the things going into the new year is attending these calls regularly. So and I quite related to what BJ mentioned earlier. So I'm a business architect. I'm into business architecture and enterprise architecture, and I haven't. Although I started as a developer a long time ago, but I've always liked the business and IT technology middle space. So I was a business analyst, a product person, but then I think Chris, you hit the nail on the head. When you said you have to think like an architect, and I always liked that big picture, and deep down that's what I wanted to be. So when I did end up when I got the opportunity to do business architecture and enterprise architecture, and it kind of just like, yes, this is what I wanted to do my entire life. It kind of it's a way of thinking, like you say. It's if you're a whole systems thinking person, or a visual person, and really enjoy kind of simplifying the whole complex ecosystem, and that's what I like doing. I'm not super technical, I'd say. So I think there is a clear difference between being an enterprise architect, a business architect, which is again so misunderstood. It's like, what do business architects do? Oh, do you draw process maps? I was like, no, I don't draw process maps. That's a different skill. But business architecture and enterprise architecture, I think they work quite closely, and they are different from solution architects. I think there's a lot of lack of clarity on the different types of architects. People don't understand. I mean, all your certifications, you can go for TOGAF, they clearly define the roles, but it's not common knowledge. And I think having that clarity on different roles is very important to get the right people in the roles, and also with the diversity in thought and gender, I think, because you'd get more women and people with different mindsets into architecture roles if there is greater clarity in what each of these roles mean. That's because in a lot of organization I see enterprise architecture is almost a progression from a solution architect role, which it's different to solution architect. A solution architect can become an enterprise architecture with that right mindset and right way of thinking. I mean, if they have all the right skill set, that's what I'd say. But yeah, so that's what I think will help as well.
I think that's a really valid point. I think particularly that the roles are very, very loosely applied, shall we say. So
this isn't the only domain that happens. Like,
Yes.
don't we observe in like professional services, you've got the junior consultant becomes a senior, and then it's like, okay, after senior, you're a manager. And like, well, not all people who were senior in something are automatically good people managers, project managers. Those are other skills. Those are other callings. So sometimes we don't think of the all the different kind of career paths that correspond to people's transverse skills, hard skills and soft skills. And there's lots of different doors to get into EA or BA. Some of those are doors through technical paths, but not only, as we've seen even demonstrated in the audience today. That's also really cool, is it, since it's a very holistic and a wide cover, like a topic that is taking that big picture view, where you can come at it, you could come into it through different ways, which is cool. There's not only one way to get there.
One of the obstacles that people face is, and this is again the takeaway from Kavita's point, is that the expectation of us from the organization versus the organization from us. There may not be equal appetite in every organization to have detailed definition. There may not be the appetite to keep it loose. So it's really adjusting to what the appetite is to really be successful for both parties.
And I think the one thing that businesses need to be careful of is, as they grow or as their product becomes successful, they probably are going to need more architectural thinking to keep it successful, to keep it growing, because, you know, as you have growing complexity, you probably need more structure, you need more direction, you need more people to talk to each other in an appropriate way. So yeah, and your quality attributes are going to get harder and need to be managed more effectively.
I think Karen's been pretty patient.
Sorry.
We can't hear you, Karen.
Mute.
Your volume is down.
Just a second.
She's just speaking from a different microphone.
Yeah.
But we can hear you now.
I need to switch to.
You're good. You're good.
Fine.
Yeah, there we got it. Great.
Oh, she couldn't hear us now.
I think that I'm the only one. I think that I'm not coming from a developer program. I'm a tester. And I decided to follow the mentoring program with Paul after testing several implementations in my work. I work as a test consultant / designer, which means that I create strategies to test several implementations as well as migrations between enterprise systems. And what I saw that was missing was like correct mapping of the activities versus the processes, or they would give me like an outdated map of the system, like, I don't know, like 5 years old, 7 years old. So yeah, I talked with my manager and I decided to just follow the mentoring with Paul, because then I would be able to create the maps my own, right? In my work, I like to help my clients, right? Yeah, I think that was an interesting, how do you say, exchange of information, because since I was more focusing on the quality, right? Quality of the product, I would be able to talk with the architects and see how they would go from the idea to the solution. So yeah, I think that
Karen,
my
hold the
goal-
people accountable, Karen. Hold the people who gave you the outdated maps, have that in email, CC them and relate your testing results. Like at the time, say that we tested this based on this, this is what was provided. Ask your manager to escalate that, like put it in the email.
No, we do that. But like I said, we are a consultant company, so which means that we gave the test strategy, right? We implement and we just go to the next one, to the next project. But I was very surprised, especially since I don't know, like it was strange for me how many companies just grow in their services, but they don't update
Yeah,
their map.
that's way
Or
too common. Yeah.
It's
way
very,
too time.
because it's
And I
very
was
complex. It's very time consuming to keep all of that together, and everybody's in such different speeds. Like there are siloed projects, there are strategic projects that
Yeah, yeah.
impact everything. It's just a very hard thing, unless you're like a Netflix or a Spotify.
Yeah. But I think as well that one of the reasons what was happening was because a lot of the implementation of the system was made by external people who would just
Common problem.
build a solution and they would just go somewhere else, and then we
Yeah.
would just
Yeah.
Cheap accountability.
yeah.
But that's why I
should-
think for like the models you're saying they weren't up to date, that it's important to have two things. First, ownership. So what's the maintenance plan on different domains of information? And the second is to sometimes not go too far in the level of detail that we try to describe to keep it up to date. So what is information we really need to have? And then what's the plan that we're really going to keep having it? Because I find sometimes in implementation projects or setting up practices, people get all excited, like, we're going to put tons and tons and tons and tons of things because that'll be really great. But I'm like, well, who's going to maintain those things, and how are you going to do those things for all of the areas that you need to cover? So trying to be realistic and maybe have an expectation when externals intervene that part of the expected deliverables is we need this level of description, or else we consider that the project's not done. You know, that be a on the deal.
Yeah. And
I
and
think
also having the right people in the table. Like if you have super users, we would, or a product owner in the company, make sure to build the solution for the role instead of for the person. But I think that is more like a communication problem, which is quite surprising. Like when people think about architecture, they think a lot about coding, but it's more about people
and communication. Just to build on Leslie's point about documentation and models, I think it's worth being very clear in your mind as an architect why you're producing this piece of documentation or why you're producing this model. Because is it because I'm writing it down because I want to understand it? Am I writing it down because I want to communicate it to the development team as they develop it? Or then this is what I want to be maintained for the lifetime of the product or the system that we're putting in. And that the last one should be the least, but just the essential details, because the more you have, the less it's likely to be maintained. But yeah, don't be afraid of producing more, just as long as you know what you're doing it for. And then you can mark that as this was snapshot, it's not going to be maintained, whereas this model or this description is part of the product and should be maintained.
We are at 11:59. Anne, Eva, and Sarah have their hands on. I can hang around, guys.
It was scheduled for an hour and a half, actually. So.
Is it hour and a half? My bad.
Sorry, that's what I was.
No, sorry about that.
Go,
My
so
apologies.
Yeah,
Annie?
I've got to head off, but I just wanted to say I echo everything you're saying. Thanks so much for the chat, and happy Christmas.
You too.
Happy Christmas.
Thank you.
Wonderful festive season. Bye.
Annick, you want to go?
Yeah, I can go. So right now I'm a business architect coming from a business analysis background. What got me that role is I used to be involved in many project initiatives and the kind of traceability between what we were doing exactly and what we were like the solution that we're asked and what was the goal we're reaching was not necessarily always look clear for me that we were contributing that much on that kind of strategy. So I got interested in like the more globally, the portfolio of projects of the company, and then all of the mix of initiative and what we're trying to accomplish looks not necessarily always neat to me. So I'm really interested in like having clear understanding and traceability on the link between strategy execution. So are we clear on what we want to achieve, and do we have the right mix of change that we want to accomplish, and will we get there then with doing those changes? So more involved in that space right now, but I still find that IT is driving a lot of those discussions still, and it's always kind of like trying to go back and have business language, trying to reach people and be clear to stay business focused in those discussions. So even like enterprise architects and the models and things that are produced, I still find like I'm kind of trying to always put that in more business language. So it's kind of I don't know if you feel you have the same struggles in the company you work with, but I still feel that even though there's business architecture practice, it's still kind of a lot IT driven enterprise architecture that I need to work with. So kind of a challenge. Interesting to have your thought about it.
I think that's a very valid point. If the business doesn't understand what we're talking about, we failed. So, absolutely.
Yeah.
Eva?
Eva.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eva. Just first and foremost, I would just like to establish an abundance of appreciation to everyone on this call, to everyone in this community. I mean, our community is just rich in insight and generosity and brilliance. And I truly believe that, unfortunately, I'm not sure who exactly said this, but they mentioned, the calling, right? It's felt. Right? We're all so eager to jump and join and contribute because we are all equally yoked in the passion that we have as leaders to lead our digital future into transformations that matter, right? Into changes that matter, into big changes that mean something. So first and foremost, thank you. And just some of the notes that I've been taking, especially, starting off with what was said that really just rang my heart. They said that things work better when they work together on purpose, right? And what I find sometimes is, of course, we know, the headache of silos, right? And working in silos. But I genuinely believe that if the constant reminder of what the on purpose looks like, was more consistent, I believe that that would be a huge key in breaking down those silos so that we know that we're not just working towards something, but we're working together towards the same purpose. So, that's the first thing I wanted to definitely cover, right? How do they work together? The business, the processes, the technology, and how are we ensuring that they're working together in synergy to achieve business goals, and of course focusing on that relationship between things, because hey, one change can cause a chain event reaction to so many other things. I know we've all seen that, and we want to make sure that we're foresighting and future thinking. If we're going to do this, what's going to be the aftermath when it comes to the sustainability, when it comes to the business continuity? So I love that. That definitely rang true for me. One of the things I also love, Chris, you said it's the way you think that makes you a real architect. And I love that because it's so true. I feel like the biggest thing that sets us apart from, our other teammates is the psychology that we hold and we have to maintain, right? One of my favorite quotes is from Einstein, and he says, "If I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute resolving it." Right? And you might hear that and think, "Oh my gosh, just 1 minute. I mean, but if you think about it, what good is a solution if you didn't let yourself marinate in the need that the problem was crying to you for?" And so that's why I love that you said that, Chris, because that's a quote that I hold true and dear to my heart. And you just being able to echo that back, I think it's really important that we stay close to that, because architects are needed to keep the success going, right? As we're scaling, as we're evolving, as we're trying to maintain our competitive edge, as we're trying to increase our value proposition, what is the psychology that we're maintaining so that that architecture perspective can be the reason why we aren't sacrificing innovation for balance and stability, why we're not sacrificing innovation for security, right? Just for context, I am actually a cloud architect, and in my experience with geeking out on the tech, so to speak, as far as designing, of course, towards the end goal, I just noticed, it's not the shiny, it's not the shiny things that the engineers are designing. It's not the cool diagrams that the architects want to beautify. It's why. It's not about what we're building, what we're designing, but it's why. And that's what's going to maintain and ensure that we stay successful. And lastly, just to tie this all together, Karen and Chris essentially touched on the fact that, architecture is about people and how you think, not just coding. And again, the shiny stuff that you build. And I believe that, this is important for us to really bring to the forefront, because the elephant in the room is that 70% of these digital transformation projects are failing, have failed, right? What are we doing to chip away at that so that we can be on the winning end and we can balance those scales? And I think that a lot of the confusion of what even is an architect, a cloud architect, solution architect, enterprise architect, I believe that a lot of that confusion, and this has been covered in one of our previous meetings, is something as low-hanging fruit as a job description, right? I'm not allowed to add the chat is closed for me. I'm doing this on one of my other devices. So the chat is closed for me. I was going to post this LinkedIn post from a retired Amazon VP, but he basically just put on LinkedIn a couple of days ago, and it's blowing up, that how broken the hiring process is, right? We have chief architects and senior enterprise leads that are needing new and increasing architecture talent, but the job descriptions are telling you to master Python and coding and all these different things that don't relate to the role, simply because the hiring process is broken, right? He even mentioned in his LinkedIn post that he's seen a part of a rejection letter. He specifically said here, found a job description that has a part of a standard rejection letter, pasted onto it, right? Like, there's so much in that can either deter people, confuse people, and then you have people that, try to construct the resume to look like the job description that, let's say past HR, past ATS, just to be in front of a hiring manager. And they're just like, you're not even what I need. You're valuable as a human regardless, but in this role, you're genuinely not what I need. What's the disconnect? So I just wanted to, call that out, because I know a lot of other people have complaints and concerns about that. Hey, we have big problems that we're solving, that we're trying to change. We need the people. If this is low-hanging fruit, why is it still a persistent issue? So I'm complete, but I just wanted to cover those points. And again, thank everyone for their contributions to this community. And I'm excited to continue to grow with you all.
Excellent, thank you. Really good. I think Sarah is one person, last but definitely not least.
Hi, I'm afraid I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time matching Eva's pure enthusiasm for the discipline, but my experience has matched a lot with Onyx. I think I've worked over a long time as a business analyst and came into architecture kind of sideways without really realizing I was doing it until I started looking more intentionally at what I wanted my next role to be, and realized that, oh, that's the part I really liked about my work, was the architecture side, because as my business analysis practice kind of matured and became more process oriented and more strategic, I felt like I started, as you step back, you start seeing the gaps between all the projects, and that kind of collective amnesia we go through when we finish one project and start the next one, and we forget what we've done, and we're not intentionally building on what we've done, and we can't see the connections between the projects that we're doing, and delivering projects that aren't really what the business is asking for and what their most pressing issue is, and how to balance the technical debt and the need to have the architecture stay current with what the business really needs and what they need to get out of it. They need to be able to see themselves in what the architecture is laying out for them. And if those roads are diverging, then that's going to be a problem for the business. So that's kind of how I came into architecture, and what I find wonderful about it is that it attempts to build that big picture and figure out a roadmap that everyone can follow that satisfies both sides, that communication and that coordination.
Excellent, thank you.
Very well said.
I was listening to what people were saying, and I was wondering if topic for a future time, what about architecture horror stories I have seen? That's something that people might be interested in talking about, you know, disasters that you've seen or problems in architecture. Not necessarily you've been part of, you may have been part of them. You don't have to own up to being part of them. You can if you want. But yeah, just sort of, as the talk was going, I was thinking, oh, I've seen that happen. That was horrible. I've seen this happen. That went badly. Yeah. I don't know if that would be a topic that people might be interested in at some future point.
I think it would be. It sounds like a self-help book, Chris.
Yeah,
you know, very therapeutic.
Yeah. Absolutely, yes. Maybe in the, you know, in the spring, maybe when summer's coming, we can have a self-help group.
Yeah, I think that
and
would
any
be
other
extremely...
Sorry.
I'm so sorry.
No, go.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think that's a great idea. I think that'd be extremely important. And I think that the value that all of us would be able to derive from that is not only, you know, of course, thinking on your feet when things hit the fan, but really one of our greatest strengths as architects are soft skills, right? The rest of the world think this is a technical role, but in reality, what keeps us afloat is the soft skills that we have and that we've mastered to navigate these treacherous waters, whether it's stakeholder management, whether it's cross-team functionality and collaboration. So yeah, I think that would be amazing, especially centered around the soft skills that, you know, had to be built, not bought, but built, right? One of my friends says, it's not on me, it's in me, right? And just the strength to carry on from that. I think that'd be beautiful. Thank you for that.
Excellent.
I'm going to throw, this is Barbara. I'm going to throw in my 2 cents on that too. Years ago, one of the recommendations I got from Enterprise Architect was that any good architect ought to be able to identify instances where architecture has failed and suggest what could have been done to make it more successful. That we need to learn from the failure. The focus on this is that we do need to learn from our failures. If we're not aware of them, then we're going to repeat them. But if we are aware of them, we should be doing things to improve. And I think one of the central themes that I got from that years ago, but also from listening to everybody this morning, is communication. That it's often the key thing to being successful.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's particularly one of the issues behind technical debt. I don't think that technologists communicate the impact of technical debt properly to the business. They're telling, oh, what do you mean we haven't implemented logging? Business is like, do I care? No. And then what that actually means, they're in breach of compliance regulations, or they can't, track back changes, or whatever the meaning is. It's not put in business sense, in business terms, so the business doesn't actually understand the impact of it.
Yeah, don't question the ivory tower, right?
Indeed.
Let's see. Any more hands up?
This is Barbara again. I'm going to throw out one more thing, because this was something else that I was hearing in more than one person's comments. The focus on why, and I know we all can refer back to Simon Sinek's, start with why. But one of the other tidbits I got years ago from another architect, was they claimed that any good architect always starts by asking, why are we doing this? But then they follow that up with a second question. Why are we doing this way? And to me, it's that second question, which is often where we have the stumbling blocks, but it's also the opening. You can think of it from the quality improvements perspective, doing the 5 whys, but it's often why this way. That often is the culture. Sometimes it's the actual business value, the business outcomes they're trying to achieve, but it's that second question that can often save you a lot, and the answers to it that can save you a lot of trouble and grief.
And sometimes there's a political aspect that you're not aware of, and that's very painful if you run across that, because as an architect you can't see the why. This makes no sense to me, and then you find out it's because of something outside the technology arena that's been done that way.
Hey, Dana and Chris, if you don't mind me asking, so I wanted to ask this group, what would be helpful for you? Like, we've done a lot of promotion in the past couple of years to get us to kind of where we're at today. There's mentorships. We've talked about a lot of different things. But what would be really good? Chris, I love your idea about like these experiences that we all collectively have, because we can use those in our own work, right? And as examples of what failed and what hasn't. So that seems like a good kind of working group. But just wondering like how we can structure this group so that, you know, we can bring value back to you guys. It's one thing to come here and kind of chat, but it's another thing to really, I want you guys to pull something away from it. So just asking for some feedback there. Sarah?
Sure. One of the things for me that would be helpful, and because the company I worked for most recently didn't have a business architecture practice, and so how to try and bring those principles into a void and to start to establish those connections and that communication with the more technical side and the more business side to start to fill those gaps, and how to start to speak with those other groups and bring that together.
Awesome.
Just, I don't know if you're about to say this, Leslie, sorry, but I think your idea of you know, the fact that you shared some titles of books is really useful. And I would really like to have like a bookshelf on Mighty Networks. I think that would be great. Sorry.
I've done it at where I work. We have a library, and then people, you know, propose that we add something to the library, and then people can share it and do recommendations. So we could do that virtually as sharebacks. But sometimes it's hard when you're on the spot with like Carrie, you're like, this is a really great question. Like, well, how can we get more out of this? And what should we do? But right this minute, I can't tell you exactly, but I know I have a lot of things to say on that. What if you guys did for all the members in Mighty Networks, like a poll, something you reach out to us, and some structured questions, some unstructured, that lets us like kind of glean also things from people who aren't in this live session. And even if I think that's an awesome idea for the book sharing, you could even put that as one of the questions, like what are your top sources that have helped you in architecture when it comes to a must read, or maybe there's some podcasts or people, you know, people in that have other forms of knowledge sharing, that then lets you guys constitute that and already get some direct value, not just ideas of things to do, but already get some direct feedback from the user population. That
There's
gives
some
time
fantastic YouTube
think.
videos out there actually now for it's not just books anymore. Barbara, did you?
Your hand's up, Barbara.
Hello. I'm Barbara. I wanted to share at the beginning, but I think I don't know if we have some time. My story with you guys.
Go for it.
But okay, I mean this last part is really really interesting. I think I contacted you for regarding mentorship, and I was really curious, let's say, about the format, you know, because architecture, it's such a huge topic. I mean, it's a very, very large field, and sometimes, okay, the technical parts, you know, you can find some information and books, and as we were saying, maybe podcast or whatever. But other parts that are more soft skill related and related to, you know, just plain experience, you know, from the people that actually have been doing this for a longer time, that kind of would be helpful. Again, the topics are many. I had the good fortune to get in the role of as an enterprise architect after working in IT. And I said good fortune because the country I come from is really small, and there is no such big need for enterprise architecture. Not so many complicated systems, but I stumbled upon an international company, and it was kind of really a lucky break for me. And I'm really interested in this. And for 2 years, I've been studying a lot and struggling, and had some colleagues that were available for mentorship. But then again, it's very difficult because we are a team of 7 people that are new to architecture. And that part is it's difficult because, as I said, not even the roles are very well defined. What is a solution architect? What is an enterprise architect? First, you know, we had to start from the beginning to understand, and then after all that, you should promote these roles in the company and what you do, how you can bring value to the company. And that still is not clear in the company after 2 years I've been there, because there are so many things to do. So we mostly help in solution architecture. When there are complex problems, we are there. And it would be good to understand if you have any platforms that you think that would be helpful for knowledge sharing or mentorship, or especially soft skill related, let's say. That would be really interesting to hear. I know it's very difficult, this part.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, Barbara. I was talking to Paul, and he was talking about doing something very similar to that through ISA, but I think doing that as an extension here of WIA as well would be good feedback, because we all need different tools to kind of help us do more with less. And I think, I just count myself here, I struggle with a lot of those tools, right? In terms of what they bring to our customers and our stakeholders and things like that. So I think that's a good idea.
Thank you. It was really nice having this conversation with you. I hope I will be able to join more of these meetings in the next year.
Excellent. Lovely. I think we're about coming to the end of the meeting. My PC is coming to the end of its, I think it's got a memory leak. My mouse has stopped working. Various other things have stopped working. It knows that a new one is coming, so it's again, you know, it's decided to pack up completely. So yeah, thank you for all your insights. They've been really fascinating. It's so lovely to have a conversation with, you know, such different people, but all with the same sort of loves and passions. Yes, any ideas? Anything you'd like to see, any suggestions, please drop them in the Mighty Networks, or send them to Dana or us or anyone, and we'll make sure we'll come up with a schedule of meetings for next year.
Yeah. Can I just add one thing, just if that's okay? You know, on the things and what we can do and have, which should be useful to everyone. So, you know, architecture is full of, like everything else, all the professions, full of terminologies and if someone who's new to architecture, yes, there is Google and YouTube and everything. I think it'll still be good to have, from experienced architects, what that term means. I don't know. I'm just thinking, or where to look for the right source. So I don't know things. I'm just thinking out loud. Really random thought. Reference architecture. I didn't have a clue what that was when someone mentioned that to me first time around, and I had to do a lot of digging until I actually went and asked an experienced architect what it actually means. So I think it's really different when it comes from someone who's been there, done that, and they explain it more clearly and in a way which can, it's they link their experiences behind it, don't they? And that, I think that is really good, rather than, because I think if you go to 10 different websites, Google 10 different, you'll get 10 different answers and you're scratching your head to like which one's the correct one actually. So so I think having like a glossary of, I don't know, architecture terms, what architecture patterns, what does that mean?
Well, could we do something more like collaborative, like a kind of a participative approach? And I know, like internally, we drove a whole knowledge. I mean, I did a whole thing about knowledge management because it's super challenging, and we really like the kind of wiki approach that lets the people in a community contribute. But you do need someone that's guaranteeing, kind of like a gatekeeper at some point on the quality and the balance of it. But it lets there be kind of a tribal knowledge that comes together, not just one group of people who have to bring out all the content.
So I'm going to put my Paul Priest hat on here and say that this is exactly what the IASA Business IT Body of Knowledge is trying to do. We'll share the link to that. We'll put it on the Mighty Networks, because
that's great.
You may or may not agree with it. It is a work in progress. It's open source. It's on GitHub. You can comment on it. So yeah, making a better resource for us all. But that's the aim, because we're not, as women in architecture, we're not going to come up with our own definition. Why would we?
No.
I mean, the company I sort of work for, I'm on gardening leave now. We had the same about our methodology. We kept it on Confluence, and it was really useful. But IASA Bitterbox is where I suggested the first place you go.
Okay.
Yep. And Chris and I are working on some kind of interactions together with like some websites and what we're doing on our website versus what we're doing in Mighty Networks, and making sure that we publish content so that it gets out to everybody properly. But yeah, we would love your contributions to that. And it is good too. And also to speak about, like, there's artifacts there as well, whether you like them or not, or whether they're useful for you or not, it's really up to you and your situation. So I think there's a lot of value that can come from that.
Some of them have been put into Miro. If your organization uses Miro, that's really powerful, actually.
I really have to go, guys. Thanks so much.
So do I.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.